Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're diving into some essays from David Allen's Ready for Anything today. Looks like we're going to try to uncover some secrets to achieving relaxed control and performance excellence.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm excited to delve into these insights with you. And lucky for us, we have a true expert here on navigating the complexities of, well, life.
It's really fascinating how Alan blends that practical advice with these deeper reflections on how our minds work. I think we have a lot to unpack here about managing those commitments we have, focusing our energy, and creating structures that really support creative flow.
Oh, I love that. That structure supporting creativity. It reminds me of this idea from Alan that we can only feel good about what we're not doing when we actually know what we're not doing.
Right.
It's kind of a head scratcher.
It is. It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? But it really does challenge us to consider all those often unconscious commitments that we're carrying with us. You know, those unfinished tasks, those fleeting ideas, even unresolved emotions that he refers to as open loops. And these unacknowledged agreements with ourselves, they're a big source of stress.
He tells a story about an executive who kept all of his emails in his inbox, thinking that he was managing them. But only when he moved those messages out did he realize the power of having a complete inventory of everything.
Exactly. Holding on to those open loops, whether they're in our inboxes or just swirling around in our minds, keeps us in this perpetual state of reactivity. And it's only when we capture those and externalize them that we can gain that real mental freedom.
Okay, so we're externalizing these open loops, we're getting clarity, and then this allows for us to focus productively, which Alan says is impossible if we're working on the wrong things.
Absolutely. He really emphasizes the need to align our efforts with a clear sense of purpose and, crucially, to visualize ourselves achieving those goals. You know, the idea that where our attention goes, our energy flows. And so consciously directing that attention becomes this very powerful tool.
He even shares a personal anecdote about creating a mind map years ago, envisioning his ideal life. And looking back, he found that many elements of that vision had actually materialized.
Oh, wow. It's interesting, right? The mind map exercise is this great invitation to explore our aspirations and identify those activities and pursuits that really resonate deeply with us. And it helps us to set our internal compass.
Speaking of setting a compass, let's navigate towards creating structures that work. And Alan kind of challenges this notion that organization and creativity are at odds with each other.
They don't have to be. When thoughtfully designed, effective structures can actually liberate creative energy. Our systems should be robust enough that our minds can let go and trust that reminders will surface at the right time.
He uses an interesting analogy of a redesigned sailboat galley, where the cooking and living spaces have been merged into one.
Right. This transformation, while seemingly practical, also fosters a greater sense of flow and ease, and it encourages us to consider areas in our own lives that might benefit from similar rethinking. You know, where can we streamline our processes to enhance both efficiency and enjoyment?
That's a great question to consider. Alan also stresses the importance of small things. He argues that small, consistent actions over time, they really yield a big impact. Regular reviews, acts of service, even just quickly jotting down a fleeting idea. Those seemingly minor acts, they accumulate into something much larger. It's like a Formula One racing team, meticulously attending to every detail and gaining that competitive edge. That mindset of intentional consistency, it can be applied to any domain where we want to excel. It's not just about doing the big things right, but integrating those small, consistent actions that create momentum and contribute to, well, extraordinary results. And to bring this initial exploration full circle, let's look at Alan's thoughts on embracing the fundamentals. He offers this really interesting concept. You speed up by slowing down, which is, it's paradoxical, but taking a step back, reflecting and relinquishing the need for control can often lead to greater insight and faster progress.
That's right.
He reminds us that knowledge comes from taking action, not just thinking about it.
Absolutely. And his statement, you don't have time to do any project because you actually can't do a project, you can only do action steps, perfectly encapsulates this.
Yeah. Breaking down large and often overwhelming goals into those manageable action steps is so crucial. It shifts our focus from the abstract to the concrete and allows us to move forward with purpose and progress.
It replaces that feeling of being overwhelmed by the magnitude of a project with the empowerment that comes from taking those tangible steps.
What else struck you as particularly powerful or insightful in these essays?
Well, one thing that really resonates with me is Alan's emphasis on taking personal responsibility for our own mental landscape. We have more control over how we react to challenges and how we shape our lives than we often realize.
Oh, it's like he's giving us permission to be strategic and playful in our approach to both work and life.
Right. And he reminds us that the journey itself is important. Being present, making better choices, and staying open to possibilities. That's where the real magic lies.
So I'd like to leave you with this. What small step can you take today to invite more clarity, focus, and creative energy into your own life?
It's a thought-provoking question to consider. It could be capturing an idea, clarifying a commitment, or just taking a few moments for quiet reflection. Even those seemingly insignificant actions, they can have a profound impact over time. So building on that idea of small steps, Alan introduces this idea of expecting surprises. It's about acknowledging that change is a constant and weaving that into how we operate instead of resisting it.
It's interesting how he compares these different mindsets. The pessimist complains, the optimist hopes, and the realist. Well, they adapt. It makes me think about how crucial it is to focus on what we can control in the middle of all this flux.
Right, and he even goes so far as to suggest this thought experiment. Visualize the downsides or the potential crises. He says that by confronting those fears directly, it takes away their power and opens up a greater capacity for bold action.
Interesting. He also encourages us to think about what we're most afraid of losing. And then he observes that often that very fear is what keeps us from going after what we really want.
Facing those fears head on can really bring clarity and allow us to make more deliberate choices. It's like shining a light into those dark corners of our minds.
Let's switch gears a bit. Alan proposes a connection between our power and our ability to relax.
Okay.
Now, it might sound counterintuitive, but his insights from martial arts actually make a pretty strong case.
Right. In disciplines where speed and precision are everything, those qualities come from a place of relaxed focus. It's about harnessing that inner stillness to really reach our potential.
When we're tense or anxious, our energy kind of goes all over the place and our decisions get a little cloudy. It's in those moments of calm clarity that we can truly tap into our capabilities.
He has this really vivid description of our minds, constantly chattering away, bombarding us with reminders at the worst possible times, like psychic RAM with no sense of past or future, relentlessly urging us to do it all right now.
Haha, that's a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
How do we deal with all that mental chatter?
The key lies in cultivating what he calls the intelligent part of ourselves. This is the part that can look at commitments and prioritize and even renegotiate with ourselves in a way that creates balance and empowerment.
So it's about creating the mental space to relax, to figure out what really matters, and then responding effectively instead of just reacting.
Yeah. Alan even connects this back to the historical evolution of, well, productivity and personal freedom. As we gain more control over our work and our lives, it opens up all these new avenues for creative expression and just overall well-being.
It's an interesting take. It suggests that productivity isn't just about efficiency. It's about tapping into our potential for a richer, more meaningful life.
Exactly. Alan then introduces this principle. The longer your horizon, the smoother your moves. Having a wider perspective on our goals allows us to see more options and handle those challenges gracefully.
Makes me think of brand new drivers who overcorrect and make all these jerky movements because they're so focused on what's right in front of them.
Exactly. They don't have that foresight to anticipate and make those smooth adjustments. It's like navigating with a wide-angle lens. You can see the whole picture, anticipate obstacles, and make those small course corrections, all without losing momentum.
Okay, so how do we take this wide-angle lens and actually apply it to our lives?
Alan suggests taking a close look at the routines and habits that we've built. We might need to reassess if they're still working. Be willing to let go of the old so we can embrace something new.
It's easy to get stuck in those routines, even when they're not relevant or effective anymore.
He asks us to think about, what's the real purpose of this activity? Does it still line up with my goals and values? And am I ready to let go of what's familiar to make space for something better?
It's about staying in touch with that feeling of being alive, that spark that keeps us moving forward with purpose and enthusiasm.
And he even uses this relationship analogy. To keep the dance alive, we need to acknowledge when it's not working and be willing to step out of sync for a bit to find a new rhythm together.
That's such a great image. Let's look back to you speed up by slowing down. It speaks volumes about the power of taking those deliberate pauses for reflection. Pushing forward all the time can backfire.
Oh, definitely.
It's kind of like driving. To change gears smoothly and speed up the right way, we need to let off the gas for a second and hit the clutch.
Alan emphasizes trusting the process, trusting that things are working behind the scenes, even when we can't see that progress right in front of us.
Sometimes the most productive thing we can do is step back, make space for thinking things through, and just allow those intuitive insights to come to the surface.
He challenges us to think about the things we always feel like we don't have time for. Engaging in those very activities might be exactly what we need to unlock new energy and creativity.
So what is it that you should be doing but keep putting off because you're too busy? What if that activity held the answer to unlocking something amazing?
Maybe it's just taking a walk outside, reconnecting with someone, or even sitting in silence to clear your mind. Those seemingly unproductive moments can be where inspiration and innovation really take root.
Speaking of breaking things down, Alan says this: we don't have time to do any project. What he's really getting at is...
We can only do action steps.
Right. It's about understanding that any project is just a bunch of individual actions strung together.
Exactly. He's highlighting how important it is to take those big, daunting goals and break them down into small steps that we can actually tackle right now.
It takes our focus from something abstract and turns it into something concrete. Instead of feeling paralyzed by this huge project, we feel empowered because now we can take action.
It's a powerful shift in perspective.
For sure. Alan then goes into this. Small things done consistently create major impact. He's talking about the power of small, consistent actions. Whether it's putting a little bit away in a savings account regularly, going to yoga every week, or even taking time to reflect every day. Those seemingly small things done over and over add up to amazing results.
Right.
It makes me think of those Formula One teams again. Meticulous attention to every tiny detail can shave milliseconds off their time and determine who wins.
It's about applying that same level of intention and consistency to the things that we find important. It doesn't matter if it's getting in shape, learning a skill, or building stronger relationships. Those small, consistent actions are the key.
And it's not just about doing the good stuff consistently. It's about tackling those little nagging problems before they become huge issues.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Ignoring a leaky faucet or avoiding a difficult conversation might seem like the easy way out at first, but in the long run, it just creates more stress and headaches.
Right. It's about being proactive, dealing with the small things before they derail our progress. And that goes for every part of our lives, from our health and finances to our relationships.
It's about taking charge of our lives and understanding that even those tiny choices add up over time. Okay, Alan then brings us to this core principle. You have to do something to know something.
Right.
It challenges the idea that we need to have all the answers or be perfectly informed before we can start doing anything. He says that often we learn the most through actually doing things, through experimenting, and even through making mistakes.
He observes that the people who need these productivity principles the least are often the ones using them the most.
Oh, it's interesting.
It's because they're already in motion, already in control of their lives, so they're more open to refining how they do things.
To get that real mastery comes from constant improvement, from always looking for better ways to do what they're already good at.
Exactly. Like those Formula One teams always testing and tweaking their processes, trying to find that tiny edge that can change everything.
And that's true for all of us. It doesn't matter if we're trying to be more effective at work, find more joy in our relationships, or feel more fulfilled personally. That willingness to experiment and learn by doing is essential.
So ask yourself, what small action can I take today to gain some new insight or move closer to my goal?
Don't wait until you have all the answers or the perfect plan. Just take that first step and trust that the next one will appear when it's time.
Okay. Building on that, Alan gives us another thought-provoking principle. It's easier to move when you're already moving. This highlights the power of momentum. Once we get going, even just a little bit, it becomes easier to keep that forward motion going.
He compares it to riding a bike. Once those wheels start turning, it takes less effort to stay balanced and keep moving.
Right. It's about breaking through that resistance to starting. Once we take that first step, even if it's tiny, we create momentum. And then that momentum helps us keep going.
He wants us to think about a time when we made a big change in our lives. What were those small, consistent actions that got things moving?
What were the little things, maybe even things we didn't realize we were doing, that started everything?
And maybe even more importantly, What small step can you take right now to start a positive change in your life?
What small action, repeated consistently, could create a ripple effect and lead to something amazing?
Those are some powerful questions. Okay, let's look at this somewhat counterintuitive principle. The biggest successes come from the most failures.
All right. This reminds us that failure is a natural part of growth. It's like a stepping stone to success.
It's about changing how we view those setbacks, seeing them not as the end of the road, but as valuable opportunities to learn.
The people who accomplish the most are often the ones who have failed the most. They've learned from those failures and used them as fuel to keep moving forward.
It's like when you're learning to ride a bike. You don't just jump on and take on perfectly. You wobble, you fall, you pick yourself up, and you try again.
It's through trying again and again, stumbling and getting back up, that we finally learn the skill.
So find a game that you can win, a game that plays to your strengths and passions, and be okay with making mistakes along the way. See them as valuable feedback.
Right. It's about building resilience, the ability to bounce back from setbacks, learn from those mistakes, and keep going towards our goals with even more determination.
I really like how Alan talks about his strategy for measuring progress. He focuses on the percentage of better choices he makes as time goes on.
Right. It's not about being perfect. It's about consistently choosing things that are in line with our values, goals, and dreams.
So what choice can you make right now, in this very moment, that aligns with your best self and helps you create the life you want?
It could be a choice to take care of yourself, have a tough conversation, step outside your comfort zone, or even just choose joy instead of frustration. Every choice gives us a chance to adjust our course, refine our approach, and become more of who we want to be.
It's a powerful reminder that every choice we make matters. We've talked about dealing with uncertainty, embracing change, and tapping into our inner strength. Now let's get into the foundational principles behind all of these practices.
Okay.
So we've discussed clarifying our commitments, managing our focus, and designing structures that actually help us be more creative. Now it's time to look at the principles that guide those actions.
Makes sense.
Alan says rules tend to materialize because principles are unclear or untrusted. He's saying that when everyone's on the same page about core values, we don't need as many strict rules.
It's less about policing people and more about giving them the power to make their own decisions. When people understand and embrace shared principles, they can make choices that benefit everyone.
He suggests this interesting exercise. Figure out how we operate when we're at our best, both as individuals and as a group.
So what are the values and guiding principles that shape our actions and how we interact with each other when things are going really well? It's important to bring those unspoken principles to light and make them part of the culture.
He talks about how his own company did this, figuring out their shared values. It's not about creating a rigid set of rules, but about making sure everyone understands the values that guide their behavior.
It creates a framework for making decisions that's based on shared principles, not a bunch of strict regulations.
Alan then tells us to use your mind to think about your work instead of thinking of it. He's pointing out the limits of what our minds can handle and the importance of using external systems to free up our mental energy for higher-level thinking.
Right. Our minds are great at processing information, making connections, and coming up with creative solutions, but they're not so great at storing and retrieving every little detail.
It's like trying to run a complicated organization without any kind of filing system or database.
Exactly. We waste so much mental energy trying to remember every single thing instead of focusing on the strategic and creative tasks that really require our brain power.
Alan also reminds us that we often think more valuably than you may think. He's encouraging us to value those insights and ideas that often pop up out of the blue.
Capturing those ideas when they come up is so important. Get them out of your head and into some system where they can grow and develop.
He talks about how much he likes writing things down by hand. He uses pen and paper to capture those raw ideas before putting them into a digital format.
It reminds us that our best thinking often happens outside of those structured, formal settings. Maybe it's during a walk or a conversation, or even just quietly reflecting before we go to sleep.
The important thing is to make a habit of capturing those insights before they disappear.
I've found that to be incredibly helpful in my own life. It's amazing to see how those fleeting thoughts can turn into something truly remarkable if we just capture them and give them space to grow.
We've all been there, feeling totally overwhelmed by an endless to-do list. Alan offers a different way to think about this, saying, infinite opportunity is utilized by finite possibility.
Okay.
He's acknowledging that we can't do everything, Trying to do it all just leads to feeling overwhelmed and being less effective. Even people with tons of resources are limited by time and energy.
It's about setting clear boundaries for ourselves, focusing our efforts on things that align with our values and goals, and accepting that we just can't do it all.
Regularly review those commitments and ask yourself, is this still important? Does this still fit with my vision? Am I willing to invest my limited time and energy into this?
It's about making deliberate choices about where we put our precious time and energy.
Making those choices is a recurring theme in Alan's work. He emphasizes how even small decisions add up over time.
Right.
He introduces this idea: 2 commitments in your head create stress and failure. It refers to all the mental clutter that builds up when we don't externalize and manage the promises we make, both to ourselves and to other people.
It's like juggling too many things at once. We might be able to keep it up for a while, but eventually something's going to drop.
It's essential to get those commitments out of our heads and into a reliable system. This frees up our mental space so we can really focus on what we're doing in the moment.
It's about creating space for clarity and focus so we can be fully present in whatever we're doing.
And here's a really interesting thought. The magical mundane might be the key to unlocking our creativity. Those everyday tasks, things like cleaning our desks or organizing files, can actually clear our minds and make room for inspiration and creative breakthroughs.
Interesting.
He tells a story about cleaning out his garage and how that physical act sparked new ideas that wouldn't have come up otherwise.
Right. It's about seeing those moments of doing as chances for new perspectives and possibilities to emerge.
So, is there a mundane task you've been putting off? What might happen if you approached it with curiosity and openness, letting it become a starting point for new ideas and inspiration?
It's amazing how the things we often resist can sometimes lead to the most unexpected breakthroughs.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into David Allen's Ready for Anything. We've explored principles and practices for navigating the complexities of modern life with more clarity, focus, and a sense of relaxed control.
It's been fascinating to unpack these insights. They really give us the power to be more effective, more creative, and ultimately more fulfilled in both our work and personal lives.
To wrap things up, let's condense these insights into a 10-point summary for you to think about. You ready?
Absolutely. Let's hear it.
Number 1, embrace capturing and managing all of your commitments. It frees up your mind.
Number 2, figure out what the right work is for you by clarifying your purpose and visualizing your success.
Number 3, design structures that support your creative flow.
Number 4, make time for regular reviews and reflection.
Number 5, don't underestimate those consistent, small actions. They're the building blocks of big change.
Number 6, plan for the unexpected. This turns potential problems into opportunities.
Number 7, remember, you speed up by slowing down. Take pauses to gain insights and make adjustments.
Number 8, break those big projects down into manageable steps to avoid feeling overwhelmed.
Number 9, don't just think about it, do it. Real knowledge and experience come from taking action.
And finally, number 10, make conscious choices, stay engaged, and most importantly, enjoy the journey.
What a fantastic set of guiding principles. We hope this deep dive has given you valuable insights and inspiration. Remember, the real power is in putting these principles into practice. So what small action will you take today to bring these ideas to life in your own world?